Writing Google Ads copy is easy, right? People are looking for something. You tell them you have that thing. They click on your ad. They convert. You're rolling in leads and sales and money and swimming your way to the bank. It's only where that's simple. Google Ads is still a very powerful platform, but it's also a very challenging platform. The AI, the automation, everything's made it more difficult to just get on and do the basics that used to be super straightforward. But essentially, the core, the guts of Google Ads is people looking for problems. The only thing that's really different today is the saturation of just how many people are competing for attention in the options. It feels like it's easier than ever to start a business and advertise on Google. And a lot of people who are running ads are not running great ads. So conversely, it's easier than ever to stand out through your ad copy. So today we're going to take a look at some of the frameworks and the thinking models that I use to create Google Ads copy, also copy for regular ad campaigns on, like mainline, could be on Meta, could be in email, any other channel. These frameworks are transferable across any channel, any medium. They're essentially just ways for you to get into the mind of the people that you're selling to and start to understand how they think, how they speak, and start using that language in there. And trust me, when you start doing this, it might feel like overkill at first, and you don't have to do a tremendous amount of this stuff, but you apply a little bit of it, and suddenly you will notice that you're standing out more, your performance is improving, and generally people like what they see on your ads and your landing pages. So let's dive in. So a lot of the brand building that copywriting supports, you don't really need the extent of that with Google Ads because people are actually searching for what they want, right? You don't have to kind of build up that anticipation or build that culture of wanting or needing this product or service. Um, Particularly if your the search intent of your keyword is high enough, that job is basically done for you. You don't need to spend 8 weeks of a campaign convincing people that this is a problem that they need to solve. They already understand that. They're coming to Google looking for people who can help them with that. And so because Google ads typically focus on bottom of funnel keywords with high search intent, you can kind of get straight to the process. But as you can see from this SERP for plumbers in Manhattan, the standard of copywriting is not very high. Um, Plumbing repair, faucet replacement, same day service. There's like one okay headline in this. All-star plumber. I don't even know what an all-star plumber is. Like, are we voting for them? Is it like the media's voting them in? Is there like a professional plumbers league that I'm not aware of? Um, it doesn't make sense. If I'm somebody searching for a service, I want to know, like, do you have experience? Are you able to help me with the thing that I have a problem with? Can I trust you? Those are the kind of things that I would want to see that would make me say, okay, let me see what these people have to offer. Let's see what they can convince me with, right? But to get that first level of buy-in, you need something that's substantial, that's a little more evocative of the pain and the problems that people are going through that have led them to make this search. What you still need to do is explain why they should pick you and your business instead of the other 20 or 30 people in the auction who are competing for the same attention and the same business. So this is where copywriting can take a group of high intent keywords like this one here, and elevate it beyond just a functional message to imparting some trust, some character, a little bit of wit, whatever it is that you want to do with your ad campaign. It does not have to be this bland, drab, boring approach that many people seem to take, particularly in commoditized services like plumbers, electricians, and that kind of thing. There's no harm in standing out. Like every business, no matter how small, you can inject a little bit of your brand character into the work that you do. Yes, be direct, be clear, be crisp, but also, you know, run a couple of headlines that are a little out there, that are a little humorous, that make light of people's situations, and not making fun of it, but just a little more casual, if that is what you want to do. But there's still, you could do better than this. You can do way better than faucet replacement, water leak repair. So the first thing you're going to want to do is sit down and just answer a couple basic questions about your customer and what they're looking for, where they are, what their frame of mind is. And if you haven't checked it out, look at the over budget video. There's a link to it on the screen right now. But check out the over budget interview that we did with Joel Kletke. So where he talks about 5 questions that you should ask yourself at the start of any ad campaign. That will kind of give you a baseline to operate off. And the cool thing is, like, even if you get this wrong, you at least have assumptions that you're working off. And then when your assumptions get corrected, you can go back and revise and refresh and redo your ads. But working without this, you just kind of like jump straight into writing ad copy. It usually comes out bland and unimaginative and sounds like something that people have seen 100 times over on 100 different SERPs. So really quickly, let's run through these 5 questions. They're very simple. They're very easy to answer if you've been working with a client for a while. If you've just started working with a client, these are very good questions to ask and build an established baseline of understanding with your client. So first of all, who am I trying to reach? Who are these people? Who are we selling to? What are they like? What are their demographics? Basically, just kind of piecing together who the potential buyer is. And then what do they want? Are they looking for an immediate solution? Are they trying to like gather information? Are they doing research? What is it exactly that they want? And if they're looking for a solution, what kind of solution do they want? Do they want someone to come in and do it for them? Do they want something that they can do themselves? There's a whole variety of ways you can answer this question. What do they care about? So this is an overlooked question, but this is what really helps you get into the psychology of who you're selling to. When you understand what somebody cares about, you're able to understand how they prioritize things, how they look for solutions, how it's going to affect their lives in different ways. And so being able to understand this, being able to answer this will give you that ability to create those headlines and those descriptions that kind of stand out a little bit. And yes, you want to cover your bases in terms of being clear with what you offer, but if you can speak directly to what people care about, what's important to them, you can kind of jump past the here's what we have stage, and it'd be more like, hey, here's how what we do can improve your life and make you feel better and let you sleep more comfortably, or whatever it might be. And then who do they trust? This is going to be really important when you're gathering your social proof and putting those things together. Do they listen to influencers? Do they want to listen to other people who have been in their position before? Other customers that you've had in the past? Do they trust industry experts, analysts, that kind of thing, right? So you want to be able to gather your social proof in a way that actually builds the credibility that you're looking for. So make sure you get this one. This is a big one. And then finally, what are they ready for? And what this is going to do is this is going to help you match your CTA to where people are. Because if people are just doing research and information gathering, you don't want to spring an ask on them where you say, hey, come spend 4 figures with me, right? What you want to do is structure things in a way so that whatever people are ready for, whatever they want to purchase or what they're looking for, you make a CTA that is proportionate to that and not 5 steps ahead. Conversely, people are ready to buy. You don't want to just give them a freebie, give them information. You want to get them into your sales funnel. You want to get them into your pipeline, and you want to start engaging with them at a deeper level. Now, the next step after you answer these questions is to do a little bit of recon, right? And ad recon is a big part of God tier ads. Is something that you'll find in the framework. But ad recon is very simple. You scout the competition, right? And you try to find out, depending on your niche and how good your LLM resources and skills are. This could take a day. This could take a week, right? So more in-depth, complicated niches like B2B, especially SaaS, and certain categories of consumer goods. You can expect a bit more complexity with how people make decisions, how many people are involved in the decision, the depth of that decision, probably even the ticket size. The local services, something that can be done in one day, something that's a little more emergency oriented, and a lot of the fast moving consumer goods, these, are not as deep in terms of how people make decisions. So you probably don't need as much time to gather this information, but your mileage may vary on this. But basically, what you're trying to do is strip out all of the ads from the SERPs and try to get an idea of what your competitors are saying, right? Um, for your particular keywords. And you want to analyze this and you want to see, like, okay, what are my competitors saying? But also, what are my competitors not saying? What pain points are they addressing? What pain points are they ignoring? And then the gap is probably where you want to be, right? So if there's a big pain point that you uncover and none of your competitors are talking about it, maybe that's an opportunity for you to run an ad specifically targeting that pain point, uh, and it will really stand out. So let's take a look at this, right? So this is a SERP for lawn care in Dallas, Texas, right? This is the example that I'm going to use as we run through some of the thought exercises and the frameworks that I'm going to show you in a bit, right? So landscaper service advertising on Meta. They're going to need to figure out what attracts the potential audience. So they're going to have to test different ads, different hooks, different angles, different messages. Is it price? Is it the quality of the materials that are used? Um, different parts of Texas might care about one area of Texas might care a little bit more about using organic or chemical-free materials. Another part might care more about a locally owned business. They might want to support that, right? So you really got to understand the culture of the place that you're selling to. And if you're limited to a certain geography, this becomes even more important. But then you can also go deeper to a more emotional level. Is it a particular type of service that I'm having trouble with? I've tried doing this myself and I've failed, and now I need somebody to come in and do it right. Is it, the agony of being the plainest or the ugliest yard on the street? Everybody else has done professional landscaping and I haven't, There's just so many layers to this example. Now in Google, you'll know, right? Depending on the keywords you're targeting, depending on the keywords that you uncover as good opportunities, you'll know if somebody's looking for yard renovation, are they looking for summertime treatment, are they looking for autumn treatment? Uh, it's very specific, and now your ad and your landing page can explain why it should be you. You don't have to convince them that this is necessary. You have to convince them that you are the one to fix the problem for them, right? And now you can press on that wound that you've identified, and you can just really go to town on that message. Another thing that you're going to want to do as part of your recon or your intelligence gathering is start to gather the raw materials for your actual headlines and descriptions, your ad copy, right? So there are three categories of places that I like to look. One is forums like Reddit and Quora. I also like to look at sales calls or other purchase data. Could be like back-end information on which products move the best, which cohorts are most valuable, who tends to be an upsell if you're on the e-commerce side, but if you're more in B2C services, or if you're in B2B, you might want to look more at things like, what the different profiles are, like what pain points people go through, what objections do they have on sales calls, what are the things that typically get a lead to go through a purchase order or request an invoice, whatever it might be, and actually move from just being a lead to being a sale that generates revenue. And then the third thing I like to look at are reviews and testimonials. I'm a big fan of just taking people's words who've, like the ideal customers, particularly ones who have used our service or our product before, taking their words, using their phraseology in the ads, and just kind of, copying that so that people feel like, yeah, they speak my language, right? Because the way that your current customers speak, very likely the way that your future customers speak. So don't be shy to do that. So let's look at a couple of examples. So number one is here on Reddit. I've gone to r/homeowners. So again, selling landscaping services, you don't want to talk to actual landscapers. You want to talk to people who own homes, people who need landscaping services done. So you don't want to go to the technical side of Reddit. You want to go to the audience or the customer side of Reddit, which in this case is homeowners. I've just done a search for landscaping. And right away you can see that there are, a number of topics around landscaping. I've gone through a couple of these, but basically, like, you can see from the overview, like, you're going to want to look for upvotes. That indicates that this is a problem that other people have. You want to dive into some of the comments and see what the responses are like. So Reddit essentially is a gold mine of anecdotal evidence, right? You can take that anecdotal evidence and marry it with your other information from other forums, from your sales calls, purchase data, reviews, testimonials, and so on, and try to find the patterns in there. And LLMs are really good at this. Like if you feed a lot of that information into them and ask them very specifically to look for the patterns, the themes, and the common pain points, it will be able to do that for you instead of you having to sit down with a highlighter and pour over every line individually. But just diving into one of these topics on Reddit, homeowners, how do you keep your landscaping looking good when you have no interest in plants, gardening, or doing manual labor outside? There's a pain point right there. I want my landscaping to look good, but I don't want to do it myself. I don't have the inclination or the desire to spend my time doing hard labor, particularly in the sun, right? So a nice little story there. My mom is displeased with the work that I've done. I keep the lawn mowed, but I don't know how to handle the other plants. The weeds are getting out of whack, right? And this person's like, wow, how can you tell the difference, right? So they're an indoor person. It's a perfect example of a very common pain point. And the first answer right there is hire someone who does have an interest in it, right? Professional. So not every answer is going to be what you want to see or what you want to hear. Um, you will have to read through a little bit, but I mean, it's it's one instance of work which is going to pay off with a database that you can use in the future over and over and over. And then as you go further and further down, you'll see more of these pain points start to emerge. Newly purchased homeowner with a lot of landscaping to do, trying to figure out what my options are. There's another one. I just bought a house and I had no idea that landscaping was going to be this intensive or require this much time and dedication. I don't want to do it. I would love for someone to come and do it for me, but you got to show me that you know what you're doing. Right? Even topics like this, the landscaper who gave us a verbal quote for tree work came over and did the job without our knowledge. Just being able to call stuff out like that, on your landing page, even if you don't do it in your ads, being able to call like common or even egregious mistakes out like that as we would never do this to you. That's a great way to show people that you're thinking through the process, right? And if you show them what your process looks like, hey, we'll give you a quote and then we'll wait for you to call us back. If we don't hear from you, we might call you once or twice to see if you're still interested, but we're never going to do any work until you give us a work order, right? So just being able to build that trust by showing people transparently, hey, here's our process, here's how we do things. That is a huge step forward. And if other people are not doing that, if your competitors are not doing that, it's going to stand out even more. This, along with Reddit, I also like to take customer reviews and feed them into some kind of system that can look for, you know, good things and critiques at scale. So just, copy paste a whole bunch of reviews, put them into a table, and upload that to an LLM. So just copy paste a bunch of reviews, put them into a table, upload that to an LLM, and ask it, hey, find all the stuff that people love about my service or my product, all the things that people critique. Um, that's a great way, right? So these are the reviews on the Got Your Ads website. I would, if I were doing an ad campaign for Got Your Ads, this is one of the places where I would start. I would identify these um, the most relevant reviews from here, feed them in, look for those patterns, look for those pain points that Got Your Ads was able to solve, and then start weaving that into my ad copy. And I would probably use the phraseology that's in these reviews directly as is without making any modifications to how people express themselves. So now we'll get into some of the frameworks. Before we actually get into the copywriting models, what we want to do is answer those 5 questions that we went over earlier, right? So let's take the same landscaper example. Let's keep running with that. 5 questions that will help us shape this campaign brief, right? So who am I trying to reach? So for the purposes of this, we're making up a shell corporation for this landscaping company. It is fictional, it does not exist. I am not a landscaper, so this is not going to be super accurate or anything, but I've just done a basic level of research so I can show you how I would approach this. It's quick, it's condensed, so take it with a pinch of salt, but this will help you understand how I approach stuff and how I think through my copywriting. So who am I trying to reach? New homeowners in the Dallas-Fort Worth area with at least 300 square feet of yard space, right? I'm going to say that as a business, I've identified that anybody with less yard space than 300 square feet, the job is not worth enough for me to take it on, right? I can't commit to it. I can't honor my promises with less than that. I can't make a profit. The margins are not good enough for me. And so I'm just not going to bother with it. Now, how I try to filter out people who don't have 300 square feet of yard space, that's a problem for me to figure out later. But I've identified this is who my ideal customer is, right? What do they want? They want beautifully done up yards with no manual labor. They don't want to do the work themselves. They want the end result without any of the effort. What do they care about? They care about cost. They want to keep things in check. They're ready to spend a bit of money, but they don't want to break the bank. They want quality. They want quality in terms of the materials that are used. They want quality in terms of the end result. They want quality in terms of their interaction with me on a business level. They want all of that. So all those other things that are associated with quality, honesty, transparency, commitment, follow through. And then, of course, compliance with local ordinances, right? All the challenge with Reddit is that it's very US centric. And so a lot of my thinking defaults to the US. In this case, that's a good thing because the US has a lot of local ordinances in terms of what you can and cannot do. Homeowners associations, just like towns and villages and cities in the US have their own local laws and regulations and zoning restrictions. And so you've got to be super careful with that, right? It's not for the homeowner to figure out what can and can't be done. As the expert, as the landscaping service provider, I should be on top of this, right? And I should be advising my customer, hey, you can do this, but you can't do that. They may know as well, but it's my job to show up informed. And then who do they trust? Well, obviously, I'm going to tell them that I do a good job, but I've got to be able to back it up. And who are they going to trust? They're going to trust other homeowners who've hired me, people leaving reviews, testimonials. Obviously, what I put on my site, I can manipulate, but if I can show reviews on Google Ads or any other kind of aggregated service, that's going to be a nice impartial third party that I can refer to. Then finally, what are they ready for? Well, based on the keywords that I've targeted, we're looking at people who are exploring options and gathering information on costs. So now I know that my CTA can revolve around these next steps instead of just telling people, hey, come here and pick a date and I'll come down and start working on your yard. No, let's go through it. Tell me what you want. I'll tell you how much it's going to cost roughly, how long it's going to take, when I can start, when it'll be done. So if you've never done any meaningful, intentional, or dedicated copywriting effort on Google Ads beyond what was required at the surface level, these beginner frameworks will kind of help you get that initial momentum going. These are some of the most basic approaches that you can take. So pain, agitate, solve. This is fairly straightforward. Attention, interest, desire, action. This is the classical model. A lot of these models just aren't used that much anymore, particularly AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action, just because the way that people buy is no longer linear with how much information is available on the internet. And so just assuming that people go through a linear process, if you tailor your ad copy on your landing page that way, may not give you the most optimal results. And features, advantages, and benefits. Now, the cool thing about these frameworks is you don't have to use them in isolation, and I'll show you how. So let's look at the pain, agitate, solve method, right, for our landscaping example. So step one is to call out the pain. In this case, we want to pick out a singular point of conflict or tension. We want to look at the keywords around that point of conflict or tension. We want to build our campaign around that. DIY landscaping is expensive, time-consuming, and backbreaking. And we know this because we've seen it on Reddit. We've seen it on our reviews, right? People call out the fact that they didn't have to do any of the work uh, as a huge plus, as a huge pain point. On Reddit, people keep talking about the fact that they don't want to do the work themselves. And, nobody wants to spend more than they have to. Nobody wants to do more than they have to. And so you're immediately disqualifying anybody who enjoys DIY, who's good at DIY landscaping. We're not trying to sell to those homeowners. Next, you want to agitate them. Now you know what the pain is. You want to make them really feel that pain. They may understand it on a surface level. They might even be subconscious. What you really want to do is drive home just what that pain could mean, like in its worst case scenario. So if you do it yourself and you get it wrong, it's going to cost even more to fix an eyesore. Right? So not only is your yard going to look ugly, you're going to have to pay even more in terms of time, materials, labor costs, service charges to get it fixed. And in this scenario, you have to get it fixed because not only is it not good looking, it's very likely that it might be a hazard for people walking around. It might drive down your property value. You don't really have much flexibility in the matter anymore. And then finally, what you want to do is present your solution. Very specifically, not a solution, your solution. Again, this comes back to why you. So in this case, our landscaping business offers A, B, and C services starting at X dollars, and you can get a custom quote for free. Now, if you have a USP, a special USP, something that a lot of other people don't, this is a good place to weave that in. Your solution should be unique to you. So if you have a brand angle, like, um, we've been doing this for generations, whatever it might be, work that in. Now, as I mentioned, you don't have to use these models in isolation. It's not one or the other. So in this, we're taking the features, advantages, and benefits model, and we're going to put that into our solve component of pain, agitate, solve. So under the solution, we're actually going to get into the specifics of what our solution is using features, advantages, and benefits. So this has a couple of examples of each, right? Features. Features are just surface level, right? They're things that we have that define our business. We serve the Dallas, Tarrant, and Collin counties, right? So expanded Dallas Fort Worth area, and 14 years of experience with local soil and climates, right? These are features that describe our business. They're not outcomes. They're not, promises that we make. It's just, hey, this is who we are as a business. When we go to advantages, this gets a little more unique, right? So these are advantages are features that are unique to our business, right? We use organic and non-toxic materials and chemicals, and 100% of our jobs are completed within 1 week, right? So as I said, this is a fictional company. And so for the purposes of this, we're saying that this business only takes on jobs that they know they can complete in 1 week. Anything large scale, tearing up a yard, completely relaying it, whatever it might be, we're going to say, hey, we don't do that. And that's an issue for the landing page, right? That's where we'll disqualify anybody who's looking for really deep, extensive work. And then finally, the benefits, right? What is in it for your customer? Because remember, everybody who's searching on Google Ads is purely selfish. They're looking for what's in it for them, and they're looking for the best, most effective, and most cost efficient way to get the best possible result. Yes, some people are willing to spend more than others, but ultimately it is still them looking out for themselves. So you've got to let them know, hey, this is what's in it for you. When you get to benefits, you really want to think ahead to, depending on what your niche is. Could be a lifestyle benefit, could be an economic benefit, could be a health benefit, could be a professional benefit, but you really want to show them this is what your life could look like if you work with us, if you give us your business, right? So host a cookout in your new look yard as early as next weekend, right? So this draws on the fact that we use organic materials, which means that you'll be able to have people in the work area as soon as work is done. We'll be out of your yard within a week. Nobody wants a, a tradesman or a contracting service in their house for a month and a half, right? And it's Texas. People love to enjoy the summer. They love their cookouts, so we'll play into that. And then, of course, boosting your property value at minimal cost. Everybody wants their landscaping to give them the benefit of enjoying it while they live there. They also want it to be valuable when they decide to sum up. Once you're more comfortable with those basic frameworks, you can start working in some more audience-driven frameworks. And these are some of my favorite because they really kind of make the individual that you're speaking to the center of the story. They bring a narrative into things, and this is where I really end up writing some of my best copy. So before and after, from painful present to the promised land, right? You want to show people you want to remind them what their life is like now, which is the before, and then show them what it could be like in the after stage, which is working with you and your solution. Right. So again, you can bring in pain, agitate, solve into this. Like it's again not one or the other. You can definitely weave these things together. So these are just some sample headlines. They're fully handwritten. I did not use LLMs to come up with this. They're very basic. Again, I don't have a deep understanding of what would work for landscaping. So if anybody out there is in the landscaping niche and realizes that this is not great copy, please forgive me. Right? Your before is the empty yard. Your home oasis is the after. Right? And then you use your other headlines to call out some of the more functional benefits. Heroes and villains. I really like this one. Enemies, giving your audience an enemy to vanquish. This works really well. People want to feel like they are on the right side of things, and so if you immediately tell them that their opposite force is on the wrong side of things, then you can really win them over to your cause. So in this case, we're going to make weeds and bad soil the enemy, right? Wage war on weeds and bad soil, two things that make landscaping difficult and drive down property value. So 5-star garden transformation, guaranteed done in 7 days. Again, functional benefits. We're going to back that up on the landing page. And finally, winners and losers, what I call threatening customers with a good time. Right? And this is very binary in the sense that you have to draw a narrative or you have to paint a narrative of winners and losers, people who are on the right side of things and people who are on the wrong and losing side of things. And you want to show people that this transition to the winning side involves working with you. So zero stress, garden renovation, no injury, no aches, no sweat. Zero waste landscaper. Dallas Fort Worth, zero waste landscaper, right? Losers are the people who worry about garden renovation and go out in the sun and do the work and end up with tired feet and knee injuries and dripping with sweat all day. And then there's a whole bunch of wastage. And, you're painting this picture of all these plebes putting themselves to work. And some of them might even enjoy it, how absolutely absurd of them. But you could be sitting inside in your air-conditioned living room or, even on the patio, sipping a lemonade, having other people do the work for you to a high level. Why would you not do that? You've really got to lean into the narrative, but I think with all advertising, all marketing, you really have to lean into a position. Otherwise, you just come across as too safe. And then finally, some of the more advanced frameworks that I use, these draw on psychology, right? So just some sample headlines for a couple of these. Scarcity bias, right? Trying to create a false sense of scarcity. FOMO, if you want to call it that, right? Book now before summer prices. You're implying that prices are going to go up shortly, so yeah, get in on it while you still can. The anchoring effect. Anchoring effect is essentially where you use one piece of information that you present first as the reference point. In this case, that is summer package costs $750, but hey, you can get it for $299 now. It's way better than saying summer package available for $299. If you're telling them, hey, you're saving hundreds of dollars, that first initial cost becomes the anchor. And so now suddenly that $299 package looks way better compared to the full price. And then the framing effect, right? It's the way you present information has an impact on how people perceive it. If you were to say only 1% of our treatments use chemicals, paints the image of chemicals being put into my lawn. Whereas if I say 99% chemical free, it's like, oh, okay, 99%, that's like pretty much all of it. Hey, you can't get rid of all of it. That's fine. So the reaction of people, it's different depending on how you phrase it. So the way you choose to present information also has a big effect. 43,680. That's how many different permutations your one responsive search ad can have if you fill out all 15 headlines and 4 descriptions. That's a lot of combinations. That's a lot of permutations. That's a lot of different ads to have Google figure out which one works best for your audience. If you can come up with 15 unique, genuine benefits, advantages, features, call outs, narratives, if you can come up with 15 headlines that span these different things and are meaningful, sure, go ahead, run them all. I would still recommend breaking them up into different ads, maybe one that's focused on one set of pain points, one on another, one with one type of narrative, one with another, whatever it is. But the more components you put into an ad, the more Google is going to mix things up. The fewer components you have in there, the more likely you're going to find that winning blend of ad headlines and descriptions before spending a ton of money. So if that's important to you, be a little more judicious with your selection. definitely hit the minimum. I mean, obviously you have to hit the minimum, but try to get into that sweet spot somewhere between 5 to 8 headlines, at least 2 or 3 descriptions. Make sure that they would make sense next to each other. So you don't want to like end up repeating stuff. You don't want headlines where if two of them end up together, it's just going to look weird. And if you have information that absolutely has to be presented, definitely test pinning your headlines as well. There's a lot of great research out there available about the effect of pinning on headlines with RSAs. Run your tests, run your experiments, but definitely invest the time to write a little more flavorful copy, copy that stands out. Even if you're in a commoditized service where people are just looking for a service, you can definitely do a lot more to make sure that yours is the one that they click on and convert with. If you really want to speed things up, take a look at this video right here where Ed speaks with Kuda about how to automate your RSA ad writing using ChatGPT. Again, you're still going to have to do the research. You're still going to have to do the inputs, but this is going to make creating your ad copy so much easier. So definitely check this out as well. Thanks for watching.